Hello, my name is Inês and Silva, and our work is about technologies to enhance quality of life of stroke survivors, their caregivers, and family. So, to contextualize our work, a stroke happens when an area of the brain is no longer irrigated, and the brain cells of that area die. Stroke is one of the biggest problems that we face from prolonged disability. There are already more than 80 million stroke survivors, and this number is getting bigger. Stroke causes cognitive and physical impairments on survivor, which affects the quality of life of stroke survivor and their family. This way, the rehabilitation process is crucial for the recovery of functionalities and independency in daily activities. There are several studies done in this area that use technologies in physical rehabilitation such as robotics, games, and virtual reality. However, the main goal is not to help to improve quality of life for survivors and family members. Also, it is demonstrated that the use of mainstream technologies like smartphones, computers, or tablets can give the sense of independency and security to stroke survivors. So, the aim of this study is to explore the potential mainstream technologies to improve the quality of life for stroke survivors, their families, and caregivers. It is important to highlight that stroke affects the quality of life not only of the survivor, but also of the caregiver and family. To achieve our goal, we have defined these key questions. What is the impact of stroke on quality of life of survivors and family members? How are they using mainstream technologies? What are their accessibility challenges? What are the main benefits and drives of using mainstream technologies? And what are the design opportunities for future technologies? To answer these questions, we conducted semi-structured interviews with 10 stroke survivors and 10 family members. In these interviews, we discussed the effects that stroke had on well-being and family dynamics, and the use of technological solutions. Through the study and analysis of the interviews, we achieved 3 great contributions. The first contribution is related to the challenges and themes of great importance that emerged from the interviews and the impact of the use of technology in the quality of life. The second contribution is the design opportunities using mainstream technologies to help overcome the disabilities caused by stroke. Finally, the third contribution is the definition of a new concept, the creation of the paradigm of dual-purpose technologies that not only facilitate the interaction of the survivor with the technology, but at the same time promotes the function's rehabilitation. In this way, we conducted interviews with stroke survivors and their primary caregivers. All the interviews were recorded. We did a total of 20 interviews, 10 interviews with caregivers, and another 10 interviews with stroke survivors. In these interviews, and in order to understand how to improve the quality of life of caregivers and survivors, we asked questions related to these 8 dimensions of wellness: physical, environmental, relationship, mental, financial, intellectual, spiritual, and occupational. We asked participants about the technologies they use and the strategies for the use of these technologies. We also asked questions about the use of online services, such as social networks and online shopping. Questions about the use of assistive technologies, if the participants knew any assistive technology or used it. And finally, questions about the support experience as a caregiver, about family dynamics and relationships with friends. After conducting all the interviews, we transcribed each one, and then we coded the interviews after establishing the codebook. After the interviews, we obtained the 5 most distinguished findings. The first one is about the emotional impact that survivors and caregivers have to deal. Stroke has an impact on professional life, hobbies, daily living activities, self-image, and also relationships with others. One of the quotes that best reflects this emotional impact is the quote of the caregiver 6, who says, "The whole family had a stroke. This did not mess with him alone. We were all affected." Also, for successful rehabilitation, it is necessary to recover emotional health, not only for the survivor, but also for the caregiver and the whole family. To an emotional recovery, it is important to find an external motivation, extrinsic motivation. For example, belong to a social group of people, who are or have already been in the same situation, as mentioned by our participants. As mentioned by Survivor 8, the survivors and the caregivers need to feel that they are not only the ones going through it. However, it is essential to find inherent motivation and establish goals to create an intrinsic motivation that will help the survivor recover. The second finding is about the adaptation of the survivor to the technologies. After a stroke, the survivor's physical impairments will interfere in the way they interact with the technology. Some survivors even stop using a particular technological device or change. However, most of the survivors try to adapt their method of interaction to the device they already have. For example, Survivor 9 started to use PopSocket to improve interaction with the smartphone. Another example, Survivor 4 said, I use it to write every day on the computer. At the time, it was just with my left hand. I used it to take a very long time to finish one page. But then, slowly, I started pressing Shift with my right hand for uppercase characters, inputting numbers on the keypad so I could move the right hand because I wanted to use it. The third finding refers to the use of assistive technologies, because not all adaptations have the same efficiency as using assistive technologies. There is also significant lack of knowledge about assistive technologies and new technologies. The survivors end up using and adapting to the existing ones. The assistive technologies paradigm is to lower interaction barriers to suit the user's limitations. And here comes the perception of these technologies. Survivors think that their limitations are transitory, and they don't want to adapt to technologies that they believe that are definitive. They believe that these technologies do not help in the rehabilitation process. So, survivors do not want to use assistive technologies because they want to see results in rehabilitation and recover their functionalities. Finding 4 is about the limitation of the rehabilitation process. The rehabilitation process is crucial to the survivor's recovery. However, there are many limitations to this process that need improvement. The rehabilitation is a process done step by step, and the recovery is slow or even invisible, demotivating survivors, and so they are unable to see what they are improving and progressing. However, it is necessary to persist and be able to show that there is a real progress, to make survivor and caregiver feel confident of recovery. As the Caregiver 9 says, one thing that I think would be very useful would be to have a kind of tracking of what they are doing, for them to register their progress. I made the effort of trying to register by taking photos. Another aspect is the lack of customization of the rehabilitation program. For survivor to survivor, rehabilitation exercises must be different to motivate them for their recovery and help to fulfill their goals. Caregiver 8 gave us the example of inadequate exercises performed in physical therapy. He says, I think there has to be an adaptation. First of all, age is very important. Age groups, mobility, knowing which side. Survivor 8 doesn't move the right side, and there are people who do not move the left side, or others who do not speak. I mean, the level. What are you talking about? Catching balls with baskets? Come on, for us it is so childish. Seeing adults, men and women, catching balls with a joystick and not even making it. So, our last finding is about the perspective of survivor and caregivers. They agree in some aspects, although they present opposite perspectives in other cases. For example, some survivors think that caregivers should not be integrated in the rehabilitation process, while caregivers believe otherwise. Or the fact that survivors feel they are not improving and the caregivers see a significant improvement. Sometimes there is new or complementary information which is given to us mainly by the caregiver. Frequently, the information is not mentioned by the survivor because they do not feel comfortable or just because they forgot to mention. For example, Caregiver 6 mentioned that Survivor 6 sometimes, after rehabilitation treatments, returned to old habits that lead to risk behaviors such as smoking or drinking too much. And other times, it is the survivor who gives us extra information. For example, Survivor 9 said, "There is a very thin line between being a caregiver and promoting autonomy. I have met many perfect caregivers." And then the survivor thinks, "Why would I get up? He is going to get a glass of water for me." Actually, Caregiver 9 often says that to me, "You get up and go get it." So, based on the findings and the opinions of survivor and caregivers, we propose the following design opportunities. There are 4 design opportunities we propose. The first one is related to the technology sensitive to the emotional state, since the emotional impact is one of the main problems pointed out. These design opportunities appear in the effective computing area, trying to explore how this type of mechanism can be integrated into the family dynamics to improve the quality of life for all. A possible approach may be the use of virtual or robotic platforms designed to support the survivor, the caregiver, and the family. An example is the use of voice interfaces that can integrate family dynamics, increasing synergies and improving emotional rehabilitation using conversation agents designed to support users in different scenarios: healthcare, companions for elderly, couples therapy, or, for example, psychological support. The second design opportunity we propose is dual-purpose technologies. Most survivors consider the use of assistive technologies a limitation for their recovery and prefer to adapt to technologies they already have, like mobile phones, tablets, or computers, even if this adaptation is not the most efficient. This problem arises because they think their disabilities are temporary. For example, they prefer to use a standard keyboard even if they only interact with one hand instead of using a keyboard adapted to interact with one hand. This way, we believe that the shift of paradigm is necessary. The design of dual-purpose technologies that consider the perception of survivor. They have to be easy to use, but at the same time challenging for the user, helping in the recovery. For example, if we think about game design, we aim to maintain the player's performance, but at the same time challenging and engaging. Passing this strategy to the rehabilitation process can help a lot of survivors' recovery. Establishing minimum barriers and step-by-step in the progress to keep the motivation to improve more and more, and so recover functionalities. The third design opportunity is self-directed rehabilitation and progress awareness. We propose the use of technologies to focus the survivor's rehabilitation according to his objectives and to make the survivor aware of the progress. It is essential to take into account the objectives of the survivor, and the current technology doesn't allow the customization of the rehabilitation plan to consider the goals of the survivor. People feel the need to be aware of the progress and to have more control and information about their progress. In this way, the use of mainstream technology can help show that progress. For example, the use of digital diaries can help to document progress, emotional state, and even some technology shared with family. Finally, the last design opportunity we propose is about the interaction of caregiver into the cycle of design of technologies. Caregivers play a vital role in the life of survivors. They are always present in all stages of the rehabilitation. They know the survivor's daily practices and family routines. That is the reason why it is important to include caregiver in the design of new technology solutions. They provide valuable and complementary information and also a unique perspective for the design of collaborative technologies. Finally, I want to thank you for your interest in our work.